I didn't know about the money knot at first. All I knew was something felt off. My family stopped talking freely. Conversations would pause when I walked in. Doors closed just a little faster. And one day I heard a number. $15 million. They said it quietly like I wasn't supposed to hear. But I did. And in that moment I knew they were hiding something. From me. Not from the world, from me. I grew up in a family that looked stable from the outside. We weren't wealthy, but we weren't struggling either. My father owned a small logistics company. My mother handled the books. My older brother, Daniel, was always the favorite. He was louder, more confident, more visible. I was the opposite, quiet, observant, the one who noticed things, even when no one asked me to. Daniel was groomed to take over. Everyone knew it. Family dinners felt like meetings. My father would explain business decisions, but only to Daniel. I sat there listening, learning, without being invited. I didn't complain, not out loud, but I paid attention. Every number, every contract, every shift in tone, because something in me knew one day it would matter. After college, I didn't join the family business. Not officially. I worked in finance instead. Built my own experience, my own network, my own sense of independence. But I still helped. Quietly. When my mom had questions. When documents didn't match. When something felt off. They relied on me, just not publicly. And I accepted that. At least for a while. Things started changing last year. My father became more distant, more private. Daniel became more aggressive, more protective over information. Even my mother stopped sharing details with me. That's when I knew something bigger was happening. Then came the first sign, a property transfer. I saw it by accident. A document left open on the kitchen table. A commercial building, downtown, valued at several million, transferred under a holding company, one I had never seen before. I asked my mom about it. She froze, just for a second, then smiled, said it was just restructuring. That word again, restructuring. It sounded harmless, but it never is. That night I couldn't sleep, because something didn't add up. The company wasn't doing that well. Not enough for new acquisitions. Not at that scale. So where did the money come from? And then I heard it. $15 million. Whispered between my parents. Late at night. They thought I was asleep. But I wasn't. I stayed still. Listening. Every word felt heavy. Like it carried something dangerous. They mentioned accounts, transfers, timing. And one phrase stuck with me: she doesn't need to know. That's when it hit me. They weren't just hiding something. They were actively keeping it from me. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Because I needed to understand first. Emotion wouldn't help me. Clarity would. So I started watching more closely. Every interaction. Every document. Every silence. Because silence is where the truth usually lives. Daniel began acting differently around me. Short answers. Avoiding eye contact. Interrupting me during conversations. Like he needed control. Like he was protecting something. And I realized something else. This wasn't new. This had been building. For a long time. I just hadn't seen it clearly. Until now. The more I thought about it, the more one question kept coming back. If there was $15 million, why was I the only one who didn't know about it? And that question would change everything. I didn't rush into it. That would have been a mistake. Because whatever they were hiding, it was organized, planned, and probably protected. So I did what I've always done. I started with the numbers. I still had access to some records, old accounts, shared folders, archived files, Things they forgot I could still see. At first nothing obvious showed up, just normal transactions, operating expenses, vendor payments, routine stuff. But then I noticed a pattern. Small transfers, regular intervals, always under reporting thresholds, always to the same entity. That entity was the holding company, the one tied to the property. I dug deeper, pulled older statements, cross-referenced dates, matched them against business cycles. And that's when it clicked. They had been moving money for over 3 years, slowly, carefully, building something off the books. I felt something in my chest. Not anger, not yet, just clarity, cold, sharp clarity. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. I checked ownership records, corporate filings, legal structures. The holding company wasn't in my father's name, not directly. It was under a trust, and the trustee was Daniel. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to process it, because this wasn't just hidden money. This was control, ownership, power, and I wasn't part of it at all. I kept going, because I needed to know everything, not just enough to react, enough to understand. The trust structure was complex, layered, designed to obscure, but not impossible to trace. Eventually I found the core, the source of the 15 million. It wasn't from the business, not directly. It was from a settlement. Years ago, a legal case my father never talked about. A contract dispute, quietly resolved, with a payout. And that money was never reported into the company, never shared, never acknowledged. It was moved, protected, and handed to Daniel. I leaned back, breathing slowly, because now it all made sense. The favoritism, the secrecy, the shift in behavior. They weren't just preparing Daniel to take over. They had already given him everything, and I was never meant to know. But here's what they didn't realize. I had something too, something they overlooked. Because while they were moving money quietly, I had been building something openly. My own investments, my own accounts, my own legal standing. And more importantly, I had documentation, years of it, emails, advisory notes, financial corrections I made for them, without recognition, without compensation. But legally that didn't matter. What mattered was proof of involvement, and I had that. So I didn't confront them immediately. I prepared. I spoke to a lawyer, carefully, without giving names at first. I laid out the structure, the trust, the hidden funds, the lack of disclosure. And then I asked one question. Do I have a claim? He didn't answer right away. He asked for more details, reviewed documents, looked at timelines. Then he said something that changed everything. If you can prove contribution, you may have legal standing. Not guaranteed, but possible. And possible was enough. That night I sat in my apartment, looking at everything I had uncovered. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, but as someone who had been excluded, intentionally. And I realized something important. This wasn't just about money. It was about being erased. And I wasn't going to let that happen. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't make a scene. Because this moment needed precision, not emotion. I asked them to meet, all of them, at the house, Sunday evening, like we used to. They agreed, casually, like nothing was wrong. That almost made it worse. We sat at the table, the same table we grew up at. My father looked tired. My mother avoided my eyes. Daniel leaned back like he owned the room. I let the silence settle, just for a second. Then I spoke. I know about the 15 million. Everything stopped. My mother's hand froze. My father looked up sharply. Daniel didn't move, but his expression changed. Just slightly. That told me everything. I didn't rush. I laid it out. Slowly, clearly. The transfers, the trust, the property, the settlement, every piece, every detail. They didn't interrupt, because they couldn't. There was nothing to deny. Then my father spoke. It wasn't meant to hurt you. I nodded, because I already knew that. It wasn't about hurting me. It was about excluding me. Daniel finally leaned forward. You weren't involved. His voice was calm, controlled. That's why. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said I was involved, and I slid the folder across the table. Inside were years of documentation, my work, my input, my corrections, my financial guidance, all tied to decisions that built the company's stability, and indirectly that settlement. Daniel opened it, slipped through a few pages. His confidence shifted, just a little. My father read more carefully, slower. My mother looked like she already knew. Then I said the part that mattered most. I've already spoken to a lawyer. That landed differently, because now this wasn't just family. This was legal. I didn't threaten them. I didn't raise my voice. I just stated facts. If necessary, I will pursue my share. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Daniel closed the folder. What do you want? Simple question, but not simple answer. I thought about it for a second. Then I said recognition, fair compensation, and transparency. No anger, no drama, just terms. Because that's what this had become. A negotiation. My father sighed. Long, tired. Because he understood. Not just what I found, but what it meant. They had built something without me, but they had used me along the way. And now that mattered. It took weeks, lawyers, discussions, tension, but eventually we reached an agreement. I received a defined share, documented, legal, not equal, but significant, more importantly acknowledged. Daniel didn't speak to me much after that, not out of anger, but because something shifted. I wasn't invisible anymore, and that made him uncomfortable. My parents were quieter, more careful, not distant, just aware of what had happened and what it cost. Now when I think back, I don't feel revenge. I feel clarity, because the truth is they didn't try to destroy me. They just didn't see me, and sometimes that hurts more. But I made sure they saw me, not through anger, through facts, through control, through truth. And if there's one thing I learned, it's this. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means you're watching. And when the time comes, you don't need to shout. You just need to be right. That's why I shared this here on Exposed Stories Media. Because some stories aren't about drama. They're about being erased and deciding you won't be anymore.